It ain't necessarily so. This is Freethought Radio on Air America.
I'm Annie Laurie Gaylor here with Dan Barker for Freethought Radio, and we're delighted to be talking today with Professor Richard Dawkins, author of the bestseller, The God Delusion. And I wanted to ask you, Richard, here you are, an eminent scientist in your field. You didn't need to put yourself on the line, sort of becoming the global spokesperson for reason and atheism. What is behind that passion to enlighten?
I think it's an aspect of science, and in this I disagree with a number of my colleagues who think that religious belief has nothing whatever to do with science, and you do your science and you have your religion, which is a private matter and has nothing to do with your science. I don't think that's right, because I think that belief in God, I kind of hinted at it earlier in this talk, belief in God actually is a scientific proposition. If there is a superhuman, supernatural intelligence in the universe, then it's a very different kind of universe from if there isn't. And so that is a matter of science. I think the God delusion is a scientific error, and therefore I don't see it as much of a departure from my previous books. I think it's really, in a larger sense, all about science. Because
if it's true, then it should be testable, falsifiable.
Well, that's a different
logical
matter. I mean, I'm a little bit uneasy about this because, of course, as you picked up, science ought to be testable, and it's actually very hard to think of a good test. I mean, God himself could bow hither out of heaven and prove that he existed, but short of that, it's actually quite hard to think of a good test. Nevertheless, even if it's strictly untestable by, say, experiment, nevertheless, I think it's still true that a universe with a God would be a scientifically different kind of universe from one without. Your whole attitude to the universe in which you live would be different, scientifically different.
Well, if we could travel up to this huge planet that he lives on and actually see the big creation machine buttons that he's pushing and look at it, maybe there would be some proof in that. So.
Yes, I mean, I think it's an interesting thought that the science of the future might one day clinch it. I think the science of the present, actually the science and the logic of the present, comes pretty close to clinching it against. But obviously not everybody agrees with that. That's
going to be the topic of your talk at the University of Wisconsin, arguments against God.
Well,
That's what they have on the poster, Richard.
Is that right?
I'm sure you can do it, yes. The Distinguished Lecture Series, yes. But you can do whatever you like.
It's probably my fault. Probably I neglected to give them a title. And so
it won't matter.
No, okay. But tell me again so I can write it down.
The poster says something like arguments against God. Yeah. So there you go. Now you know what you're talking about.
Thank you very much.
Now, I still say, though, that it's a very rare person who puts himself or herself on the line to promote atheism and free thought in our religion-drenched world. And so you must care very, very passionately about the harm of religion.
I am not drenched in it because I don't live in your country. You are drenched in it. You are the ones who are putting yourselves on the line. I visit America about twice a year. So don't pat me on the back too much.
But still, I think that the whole purpose of the God Delusion, the documentary you did for Channel 4, The Root of All Evil, is to open up people's eyes to the harm of blind faith.
Yes, I mean, I disown that title, Root of All Evil. I don't really want to claim that religion is the root of all evil, the root of quite a lot of evil. But I'm not sure that I would say that's my main motive. I think my main motive is that I care about the truth. And although I certainly agree that it does cause a lot of evil, and I rather like Christopher Hitchens' subtitle, something like How Religion Poisons Everything. Yeah. By the way, that subtitle didn't make it across the Atlantic. The British edition has a different...
Really?
Much worse. Yes, the British edition is just, I think it's The Case Against God or something like that, or The Case for Atheism. Which is very sad because there's no reason why a book's title should change when it crosses the Atlantic. But anyway, that was a digression. I do think that religion causes a lot of evil, But that wasn't my primary motive for writing the book. My primary motive is that I care about what's true about the universe, and I think religion is false, and I think it's an interesting, logical, scientific, rational argument that it's false.
I think what you say in the God Delusion is powerful, but as I read it, I saw some of the same or parallel concepts from earlier books you had written. Even back in The Selfish Gene, you were doing Bible criticism. I noticed some pages in there but was that in the mid-'70s? And
yes, that's true.
And in The Blind Watchmaker, many of the same sentiments. Your Boeing 747 argument appears back then in a different form. So you've always been interested in this.
That's true. Yes, actually, ever since I was at school. When I was at school when I was about 17 or 18, I was one of a group of three of us who refused to kneel down in chapel, and we would sit defiantly there looking out over this sea of kneeling heads, and feel all smug.
Well, there is something about everybody's head bowing. It's the perfect position to put something over on someone.
That's true.
With their eyes closed.
Yes.
Well, it's the posture. The postures of prayer are the postures of slavery. You bind your wrists.
Yes.
You bind your wrists together.
Yeah.
You put your head down below the master. You bow down to show how inferior you are.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I never thought of it like that. It's quite true.
Now, what about the whole, as a scientist, when you look at the United States, 50%, sometimes we see higher, of Americans are dismissing Darwin and embracing some sort of creationism?
Yes, I think it's sort of worse than that, because there are plenty of people who embrace some sort of creationism, by which they mean, I don't know, God started evolution off or something like that. But the near 50% that you're quoting not only completely dismiss evolution, they even think the world is young. They even think the world is 6,000 years old. And that is not a trivial error.
No.
I've analogized it before, calculated that it's equivalent to believing that North America is, from New York to San Francisco, is 7.8 yards. That gives you the scale of the error. It's not a trivial error.
Be pretty crowded, I would think.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a believer, though, I used to reconcile that, and I'm sure you've even addressed this argument, the prochronic or the omphalos argument that, when God creates a tree and you cut it down, how many rings do you count?
Yeah.
It would have age inherent. So 6,000 years ago, God created the earth with age inherent,
sure.
with the light waves in transit, so that it would look like it was older. So can you disprove that?
Yes. No, you can't. Bertrand Russell had a nice analogy for that. He said, maybe we were all called into existence 5 minutes ago, complete with holes in our socks.
That may be, and how do you disprove that?
No, you can't disprove it, but I mean, it's sufficiently absurd that you can make people not take it seriously. I mean, the omphalogical argument comes, as you know, from the great debate over whether Adam and Eve had navels.
Yeah, the omphalos.
Having never been born.
And didn't Bertrand Russell say that all ontological arguments are rooted in bad grammar?
Something like that.
You may have said that.
Yeah, we owe a lot to Bertrand Russell, I think so.
But wait a minute, there was a confusion there, because the word we were talking about was omphalogical.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The Greek word for belly button is omphalos.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So we have to take a break. We'll be back. We're talking with evolutionary biologist, Professor Richard Dawkins, and author of The God Delusion, and we'll be right back after this.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Varner from Iowa City, and I'm on Freethought Radio.